This meeting is being recorded.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Relationship Arena. So this is the space where we come to discuss all things relationship with ourselves, with those around us, with the world. And today we're looking at a different relationship perhaps than we've looked at before. It's a relationship that I know my guest feels that for women in particular is often one that's overlooked and perhaps needs more attention than we should be giving it. So I'm delighted to welcome Katie Nutting, personal wealth advisor here. So thanks, Katie, for being on the show.
Hi, Ali.
So before we launch into our topic, first of all, let's tell everyone a bit about you and what we mean by a personal wealth advisor.
Okay, so a personal wealth advisor helps an individual or a couple to realise what their financial goals and dreams and aspirations are. So it's not about how much money you want in the bank account at the end of a period of time. It's about talking about when you want to retire, what you want retirement to look like, what you want to do for your children, what you want to do for your house. Do you want a bigger house? Do you want to buy a second property? You know, it's about having those conversations with clients, showing them where they are based on the assets that they've got across their bank accounts, pensions, investments, and then showing them what they need to do in order to reach the goals that we've discussed at the start.
Okay. Now, for some people watching, they might say, well, that's nothing to do with me. I don't have loads of spare cash. I haven't got thousands sat in a bank account. I don't really understand investments. But actually, you work with a group that I think really shows that why a wealth advisor is actually more for everyone than you would actually think.
Yeah, so I work very closely with solicitors on divorce cases and also bereavement. So when there's been a loss of a relationship, and when particularly a woman then has to take on the long-term finances of the relationship.
Yeah.
And what we tend to find is that women are very good on the day-to-day spending. So we'll pay the utility bills, we'll do the food shopping, we'll manage that side of the finances, but a lot of women don't get involved in long-term planning in terms of putting money into a pension for themselves or saving money, knowing what the mortgage is, knowing what your long-term plans are. And when people go through either a bereavement or a separation, it could be the first time that they've ever had to deal with that. And it's very frightening, very unsettling. Yes. So I work with clients and solicitors to bring people through that process, tell them about budgeting, understand about looking at your cash flow, looking at maybe a pension share that you're receiving from an ex-spouse, or money that you're inheriting, and about what do you do with that money so that you can live the life that you want to live.
I think that's so important, and I do agree with you completely that I think there's a generational thing. So I think we've still got an older generation where they have those more traditional roles, but I don't think it's just generational. I think that there still are women who play that role out, in younger generations because of just simply the way we continue to set our homes up, and I think, predominantly when women go on to have children, there's, they're still the highest percentage of who actually cuts down on their working hours. Their partner is the higher earner, the wage goes there. You're right, they do the day-to-day stuff, but two very different things, but both incredibly unsettling to suddenly find that your partner is no longer there, and all of those tasks that they looked after, you now have to look after, and you maybe have never even had a concept of what that looked like. I've worked with clients after bereavement where one of the ladies had never even gone to the cash point. She just never had to think about these things at all. So yeah, it's really distressing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say about generational, because what we're seeing from reports that are going through, and we've done one recently through the Money and Mind report, is that actually we're going backwards a bit. So the younger generations now, with the idea of influencers and Instagram and all the rest of it, they want to just be looked after. So there was a big poll about young women now who just want to be looked after financially, and that really saddens me when I think about how much other generations have done for women to break that glass ceiling and have the opportunity to earn what men earn and have that level playing field, and now we're not making the most of it. So it's
you know
strange.
I'm really interested in that. I think that's, you know, I hadn't heard that, and I assumed wrongly, obviously, that we were still pushing for young women to, you know, take those opportunities. But, you know, to think that they sort of see that as something that's you know, I don't even know if appropriate's the word, because obviously each to their own, but to feel as though that's what you want to aim for. I guess what you're saying is they want to find a partner who's rich or can look after them financially, and they want that lifestyle that is demonstrated on that social media platform.
Yeah, and it's worrying for me. I've got two girls, and you know what it's like when you're bringing up children. You want them to have all these opportunities, but it's a really interesting concept as well, because it's not to say that it's not right or normal for each person in the couple to have their own roles. So there are certain things in my house that I do, there are certain things that my husband does. That's normal because you play to your strengths.
Yes.
But when it comes to the finances, it's just about being in an informed position. You don't have to be buying and selling stocks and shares. You don't have to be doing that. But if you've got an advisor and they advise on your family investments and plans, go to the meeting. It's for both of you. Get involved, ask questions about the mortgage. Just understand what your position is, because then you don't get caught off guard if you go through loss or separation and all of a sudden there's debt that you didn't know about, or there are investment accounts that you didn't know about, and that can make you feel really vulnerable. So it's just about what your role is, or however you're comfortable, just ask those questions and be involved.
I think that's really good advice, because, you know, so often you sort of see it as such a shock for women, you know, when the divorce happens or the bereavement happens. And for all that time, they thought everything was looked after. Let's take bereavement, and we'll talk about divorce in a moment. But, you know, with bereavement, they thought, well, I don't need to worry because I've got life insurance and I've got a pension and, you know, we've got an income. But actually, they don't know where it is. They don't know what it is. They don't really know how much it is. They don't know whether that's going to cover paying off the house, or if, you know, so it's kind of sitting there thinking it's all taken care of, which technically it is. But when it comes to it, they've got no way of making things happen. And you want them to happen as calmly and as smoothly as possible, don't you? Yeah.
And money, regardless of your financial situation, when you've gone through a bereavement, it's all about removing as many pressures as you possibly can. And if you've got someone that you can work with, so if you've always had an advisor, that's why I say get involved, make sure that you go to those meetings, because we see massive stats as well now where a lot of women would actually change their advisor if their husband were to pass away. And that's typically because it's been a male role to go and look for that advice. And if one person is choosing that person, it might be the right fit for them, but it might not be the right fit for the couple.
Yes.
Whereas if you can go together and ask those questions and feel comfortable and build that relationship, you've got someone to go to. And I tell everybody, have that magic spreadsheet, and it might not be a spreadsheet, it might be a shoebox where it's handwritten, but I have one so that if anything happens to me, everything's there, policy numbers, where the gas and electricity is, you know, just that information that you can then just hand over to somebody and say, please sort this and tell me what I need to do, rather than rooting through carry bags of paper.
I mean, so let's just recap there for that sort of thing. So get involved, ask the questions, don't be afraid to go to the meetings, you know, and be aware of what finances are coming in and out of your house. You know what your costs are, know what your expenses are, know what your income is, and know where everything is, you know. So okay, so let's talk divorce, okay, because this is something, you know, with bereavement, in the nicest possible way, you know, most people have life insurance and this, that, and the other. With divorce, it's a loss, isn't it, where there's no real gain. Okay, there's no policy for divorce which says when you get divorced you can claim, you know, here's your policy that you've been paying into, you know, and you get a lump sum. It's about division, and it's about them trawling through and working out what they're entitled to. So what are your sort of top tips for well, anyone really, you know, who finds themselves suddenly faced with that in terms of their finances?
What I would say is that in most divorce cases, it's what we call needs based. So it's not an infinite pot of money that will be equally split and everybody will be happy, because a lot of the time there are children involved, and it's about, okay, how much money needs to go to this area in terms of children, and, you know, making sure that you can run two houses, because typically we've had one house and then everything has to be split. So it's a very difficult process to go through, and you'll know that more than I do, emotionally. But when it comes to the money side, anyone that's going through a separation, I would say make sure you know what you've got ready to fill in your Form Es. So make sure you know what your position is. And just try and be mindful of what you think your spouse's position is as well, to make sure that when that Form E comes in, it looks sensible.
Right.
And not things being omitted. Another thing that I would say that I see quite often is where one party will say, let's just leave the pensions, we'll keep our own pensions and we'll split the house and the cash. That's quite common. But actually, you tend to find that, especially if women have taken time out to have children or look after other family members, pensions can be quite a big disparity.
Right.
So don't just ignore them and think, well, we'll keep our own, because a pension can be as big, if not bigger, than what the house is when you put it together.
Okay.
So I think take into account your pensions, and also be realistic when you're looking at a budget. So I've worked with clients who are going through a very difficult divorce, and there's a lot of ill feeling between two parties.
Yeah.
And they want to hit them where it hurts, which is always the finances for one side. But what I would say is be realistic when you're looking at a budget for anything like maintenance orders, because it's powerful to go in with a realistic situation, because at least then you're putting forward something sensible, something well thought out, something that makes sense, rather than going in and saying, I want 80% of my spouse's income. If you go in an informed position and something sensible that you've really thought out, which an advisor can help you with, then you go in a much stronger position, rather than it being led by emotion.
And I think that's really important. And you're right, you know, I see this on my side of it. And, you know, again, you know, divorce is horrible for all parties. But, you know, for some women, they've been a stay-at-home mum. Okay. So again, they've had that security. That's the decision, that's the dynamic of the relationship. And that may not be feasible. So having the expectation that when the divorce is going through, you're still going to be a stay-at-home mum, you're still going to, you know, it's not, you're not entitled to that kind of, what do they call it, that level of lifestyle, you know, that you expect to have. So you may have to think about looking for work. You may have to think about different ways of income. That's very difficult, because it impacts the choices as a couple that you've originally made, and the choice that you've made. So not only are you going through this awful divorce and this loss and this hurt, but you're having to completely change your way of life. And you're right, kind of going in there and almost saying, I have to take the emotion out of that. I have to show that I've thought about this, rather than saying, this is what I'm going to have because it's what I've always had. It doesn't put you on a good footing, does it? You know, and that's awful. that, you know,
Yeah.
that because it rips people's lives up. I get that, but you have to be realistic.
And I think one of the biggest things that we tend to see as well is where particularly women who've got small children want to keep the family home.
Yeah.
And they're so adamant that they want to keep the family home, that they want the children to have consistency and they don't want the upheaval for them.
Yes.
But sometimes that can be to the detriment of other assets. So
Right.
you might say, I'll give up my right to the pension, to the cash, anything like that, if I can keep the family home. And what we typically see there is actually in 12 months time, that woman might feel like she's ready to move on now, and the house might hold too many memories. You might meet somebody new and they don't want to start new memories in a house that you've been in.
Right.
So you've given up assets to hold on to something for emotion's sake that is as valuable in the long term. Whereas if you're open to being flexible there and looking at potentially downsizing and starting new memories with the children and just approaching it in a more flexible way, it will give you better quality of life, because you're not paying every penny to support this big house. You're actually having that money to start going out with your friends, taking the children somewhere, saving towards a holiday, things that give us real joy.
Yes.
Rather than bricks and mortar.
And we're going to explore this more in another episode with a fabulous lawyer who's coming on to guest with us as well, you know. But I think, you know, it's about, so we're saying be informed, you know, from the get-go. I always, you know, I've started to say, you know, about the storms, really, you know, don't wait for the storm to hit and the tree to be uprooted and the fence to be blown down, you know, make the preparations beforehand. So get yourself informed, find out where everything is, be involved in the finance conversations. And like you say, find somebody that can be your advisor, so that when these things happen, you aren't looking at it from an emotional perspective. You've got someone else saying, actually, take a step back, let us look at this for you, we'll work out, you know. So would you work with divorce lawyers or family lawyers, you know? Is that something that's available?
Yeah, definitely. So I do a lot of that work, and I will sound out a lot of conversations prior to getting to the point where orders are drawn up.
Right.
So we can do cash flow planning to look at how much pension do you need to keep, how much can you give away, you know, what does the housing situation look like. So we do cash flow planning. And I also work with a lot of solicitors when they've done pension reports that they want second eyes over, or they want a discussion with the client to explain about the pensions they've got and what they're giving up. So it's a protection side for them as well. So it's about, when you're in that situation as an individual, you want the best team around you, and that's someone that can do the legal work, the financial work, and the emotional support.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it would be just such a great triangle, you know, to have a relationship therapist helping, even if you're going through the divorce, you know, that's where the therapist that's where I do a lot of work, is where they've already decided that this is not working, but there's children involved, they have to maintain a relationship, this needs to be as amicable as it can be, there needs to be arrangements made about who has children, you know. You want to do some of that outside of the courts, and then you've got your divorce family lawyer who's helping you with like the ins and outs of what that looks like legally, and then you've got your, you know, financial advisor kind of really helping put those foundations in place. And that leaves you the space to almost grieve and deal with the practical day-to-day stuff. Exactly. Well, it has been lovely to have you on. We could talk about this for a long time, but I think what we're saying is, you know, it's a posh title, personal wealth advisor, but it isn't just for people with, you know, thousands and thousands of pounds. It is actually more important for, you know, normal people to get involved, to get educated, and especially for women, you know, to be informed and be able to make those decisions. So if you are watching on the YouTube channel, you'll see underneath there's links to Katie where you can get in touch. And if you have any comments, pop them on there and I'll go in regularly and check on those and we'll reply to them. And, you know, if anyone has any questions, then I'm sure, you know, Katie will be happy to tell you how you can get more information about different things. So Katie, thank you so much. It's been lovely to chat to you in the arena.
Thank you very much.
So my last question I always ask my people I interview is about relationships. So when I say the word relationship, what is it? What is a relationship to you? What is it all about to you?
So I think it's give and take for me. I always tell people that I had no intention of getting married and I had no intention of having children. Neither of those were on my list because I don't think I felt like a relationship added value for me.
Right.
That's always been something that's really key. And I know that you've talked about this before, when you're looking at a relationship with your business, with your partner, whatever it is, about the value add.
Yes.
And that to me is a relationship, whether it's to do with my partner, whether it's to do with my children, my family, my work, friendships, anything like that. I think both sides have to add value because otherwise it's not a relationship, it's a one-way street. So I'm very keen on that.
Mutuality, purpose and mutuality. There you go. That's absolutely what it is. Well, once again, thank you so much for your time. We hope you enjoyed this interview in the relationship arena. Do the little YouTube thing. Don't forget to subscribe. We don't spam, but you will get to know when the next episodes are coming out, as well as interviews. I often pop in here and do a behind the scenes, what's coming up in sessions, and give my thoughts on what's happening in relationships in the world around us. So we look forward to seeing you next time here in the relationship arena.